right, everyone, welcome to What's Happening podcast on Bedworth Times. Our tagline says it all. Everybody wants to know what's happening. This is What Are People Talking About segment, where we sit down, unpack what's stirring and keep it real for those curious minds out there. Right now, people are talking about the showdown that went down in the Oval Office between US President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. For those trying to figure out why South Africa is suddenly trending in the White House, why Elon Musk went UFC there, why Trump is suddenly acting like the savior of white South Africans, and why this disinformation war about an imaginary white genocide in South Africa even exists. Let's unpack it. Because it didn't start with Trump, it didn't start with Elon, it started when South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice. This all started when South Africa backed the Palestinian people and took Israel to the ICJ for alleged acts of genocide in Gaza. That's when the storm began. South Africa, a country that understands the price of apartheid, stood up boldly for international justice. And certain global powers weren't pleased. Suddenly, South Africa wasn't just a country dealing with its own internal challenges. It became a target of diplomatic backlash and orchestrated disinformation.
In their destruction of Rafah, Israeli soldiers deployed to Gaza continue to invoke the Prime Minister's speeches, which are themselves genocidal. In case what I've said is not clear enough, let us hear them in their own words. The destruction of Gaza and Palestinian life is understood by commanders and soldiers, as the video shows.
Shortly after that bold ICJ move, President Ramaphosa signed the Expropriation Bill into law. Now let's break this down. Contrary to the panic and propaganda online, this bill does not call for the land grabs or the unlawful seizure of white farmers' land. What it does, it offers a legal framework to expropriate land in the public interest and only under clear, legally defined conditions. It's a part of a necessary and overdue step to address South Africa's deeply racialized land ownership imbalance, a legacy of colonization and apartheid that has left the vast majority of land in the hands of a small white minority. This isn't about revenge, it's about redress. It's about building a more equitable South Africa.
I'm going to do an educational series on the Expropriation Act of South Africa, so where we're talking about land expropriation. And I'm going to start with this one with the no compensation part, because it seems to be the most controversial part, but it's also the part that people are spreading a lot of disinformation about. So let's see when a property can be expropriated with no compensation. The first thing I want to put out, if you cannot read and understand legislation, or you can't find someone to actually read and explain it to you, rather don't buy land. Okay, because understanding legislation around property ownership in South Africa is an important thing. Second thing that I want to put out is you need to make sure that you are fully aware of what is in Section 25 of the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law in South Africa. But let's get to the null compensation now. When can the null compensation actually apply? Unused land, number one. That's where land is held for value appreciation rather than use or income generation. So in other words, when you apply your mind, it cannot be a farm, because what does a farm do? It actually generates income, it provides jobs, etc. Okay, now abandoned land. When an owner neglects to control the land despite having the ability to do so. Health and safety risk. If the land's condition endangers people or property. And then finally, state investment exceeds value. It's when the land's market value is equal to or less than the state's investment in it. Now, you see all these null compensation requirements. However, even if this is the case, so you've got a piece of land that you're just holding to increase its market value, so you're a bit of a hoarder, okay, but there are still key considerations, and this is in the Act, okay. First of all, it must be just and equitable. Courts must still ensure no compensation is fair under the Constitution, supreme law in the land, okay. It's not automatic, so someone can't come on Friday and say, you got to move out, we're moving in on Saturday and we're inviting our friends for a braai, okay? Each case is assessed individually based on history and use. And lastly, every single case of null compensation will be open to legal scrutiny. So my suggestion is that if you are listening to someone on the Expropriation Act, the first thing that should disqualify them from this discussion is if they call it the Expropriation Without Compensation Act. That's the first thing. Don't listen to them any further because they have a specific political agenda. The second thing is, if they cannot explain to you the criteria for null compensation, they have an agenda. The last thing is, if they cannot explain Section 12 of the Expropriation Act to you, which refers to just and equitable compensation, they have an agenda. So my suggestion is read the Act yourself, and if you're uncomfortable with the Act, then, or you've got questions, then put the questions out. But look for people that are going to explain each section of the Act, not just oh, look at the heading, it says no. And yes, because no is actually in the Act, it's actually discussed. Of course it's unpacked. And I've just showed you what comes from the Act. I'm going to do a few more of these on different sections just so that you are, up to date. But please feel free to read it and have discussions with people that are not pushing their own agenda.
But Afriforum, the right-wing lobby group long entangled with white nationalist narratives, saw the bill as their golden ticket to push an old agenda, white genocide. For years, they've claimed that white farmers are being slaughtered en masse, a claim repeatedly disproven by actual crime data. But with the new bill signed, they found fresh fuel to reignite the myth and spread fear-driven stories across international media. And it worked. The propaganda storm reached the White House. Donald Trump, known as one to never miss a chance to stir chaos, jumped in. He declared that terrible things were happening in South Africa, citing farm murders and land seizures. He even signed an executive order and offered refugee status to white South Africans. Yes, white refugee status in a country where black people still face the worst poverty, inequality, and landlessness. The irony are astounding.
We do not have a genocide in South Africa.
This South African farmer wants to set the record straight. He wrote an open letter to US President Donald Trump after Trump offered Afrikaner farmers refugee status.
But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white.
The first group of 59 Afrikaners traveled to the US in early May. It has raised questions about why a group of white South Africans of Dutch and French descent are being granted refugee status when the Trump administration has stopped all other refugee programs. De Jager represents a large farmer organization which has members across South Africa. He says while it's true that farm murders are a major problem, Trump hasn't got the facts straight.
I wrote the letter to Trump because I feared that he might have a misunderstanding of what is going on here. We thanked him for having sympathy with our cause, but we also said, rather help us to make things better here. Help us to, within our lifetime, fix the problems we have here. And it's not only a race thing. Black farmers have similar problems too, and we need those problems also to be attended to.
Trump's genocide claims are a result of brutal attacks on farmers in South Africa. Most of the murders happened during armed robberies. There's a large memorial at Nampo, South Africa's largest farming expo, dedicated to farm murders. It contains around 2,800 names, going as far back as the 1970s. One thing that stands out about this event is the diversity. We've seen many Afrikaners, but we've also seen many black people in attendance. This memorial includes the names of black farmers who were victims of farm murders, debunking the idea that it's a crime that only affects white people. And those we spoke to say while they are concerned about farm murders, they don't want to leave South Africa.
If people want to do it, I think it's a good idea. It gives them an option out if they want. But I personally would not do it. This is my country. And that is something that Mandela fought for, is for freedom for all.
I cannot really say there's a genocide in South Africa. The only thing that is happening is it's a crime in general. You know, in every country, in every places, we do have crimes, irrespective of race, you know. So I think the genocide issue, it's exaggeration.
Then came Elon Musk using his massive platform, X, formerly known as Twitter. He used it as a megaphone, and his AI tool Grok, he amplified this misinformation. Why? Because South Africa didn't allow him to roll out Starlink without complying with BEE policies, which require partnering with local companies. Instead of adjusting, Elon cried racism and launched a full-scale tantrum, using his platform to portray South Africa as a land of discriminatory laws and racial oppression.
You should be questioning why are there racist laws in South Africa? That's the first problem. That's what you should be attacking. It's improper for there to be racist laws in South Africa. The whole idea with what Nelson Mandela, who was a great man, proposed was that all races should be on an equal footing in South Africa. That's the right thing to do, not to replace one set of racist laws with another set of racist laws, which is utterly wrong and improper. So that's the deal, that all races should be treated equally, and there should be no preference given to one or the other. Whereas there are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African, and not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
So Elon Musk tweeted this the other day, and this tweet has me so hot because the fake victimhood and the wanting to be oppressed so bad is so triggering. And I want to make it very clear that the reason that Starlink does not operate in South Africa has nothing to do with the fact that Elon Musk is white, and everything to do with the fact that he refuses to comply with the Black economic empowerment laws. Now, in case you didn't know South Africa's history, here's a little breakdown. South Africa has been colonized since 1652. And during this period, the Dutch and the British went back and forth fighting different wars over land and control of South Africa. During this colonial period, the indigenous black people of South Africa were stripped of their land, their rights, political rights, economic rights, all of that. And then fast forward to 1948, when the white minority government, the National Party, took over South Africa and implemented what we know as apartheid. Now, the apartheid government implemented laws that literally divided South Africa along racial lines, with white people at the top and black people at the very bottom. Apartheid laws systematically took away land, economic power, political power, social power, everything from Black South Africans. And what you have now is that white people make up 8% of South Africa, but hold the majority of the land and the economic power. So when apartheid ended 30 years ago, this is not old history, this is recent history. 30 years ago, I am 30 years old. The year that I was born was the year that apartheid ended. When apartheid ended, the new government had to implement laws and mechanisms to try and rewrite the injustices of the past and try to uplift Black South African people and create a more equitable and equal society. One of those ways that they're trying to do that is through Black Economic Empowerment laws. Black Economic Empowerment, or BEE laws, are in place to ensure that Black South Africans can have an opportunity to participate in the economy. Starlink does not operate in South Africa because Elon Musk refuses to comply with these laws. Now in South Africa, for Starlink to operate, they need a license. In order to get this license, one of the requirements is that 30% of the company needs to be owned by Black South Africans. This is a part of the BEE initiatives. Now this rule is implemented and imposed on all companies that wish to participate in the South African economy. This has nothing to do with Elon Musk being white. If Starlink was owned by a Black American or a Chinese person, they would still need to comply with these laws. And literally all other multinational technology companies have managed to comply with these laws, because what most of them do is they enter into strategic partnerships or joint ventures with local South African companies. So for example, Amazon Web Services partnered with local data center providers in South Africa who comply with BEE in order for it to participate in the South African market. Microsoft has done the same. They partnered with the South African telecommunications company Vodacom that complies with BEE standards. Now Starlink has not agreed to do any of this, despite the fact that most major tech companies do operate in South Africa. But the reason why Starlink is not in South Africa has nothing to do with the fact that Elon Musk is white, and everything to do with the fact that he refuses to comply with laws that are in place to uplift marginalized groups. Now there are a lot of valid criticisms about BEE, with a lot of people arguing, rightly so, that these laws have created kind of a minority Black elite. And we can talk about that in another video.
So what did the South African government do? They pulled up Ramaphosa and his top delegation, including the white billionaire Johan Rupert, who happens to be the richest man in South Africa. He came also with the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, who is the leader of the opposition party, Democratic Alliances. They flew to the US to reset diplomatic ties and correct the record. But what was expected to be a formal media briefing in the Oval Office quickly turned into a circus. Trump flipped the script. Instead of diplomacy, he staged a media ambush. The Oval Office turned into a TV reality show. And Ramaphosa, he looked rattled, as in like not yet that much prepared, not used to being grilled by the press, since back home, the media briefings aren't exactly hardball on question and answers. Then came the bombshell. Trump's team played a clip of Julius Malema chanting the controversial Dubulu Ibunu song, Shoot the Boer.
Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yes. South African occupy land. That's who we are. Honorable member, what to do? Can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament? Honorable. Yes, honorable member. We must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. Gaza. Kill poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness. It's Gaza. Shoot to kill Yamaza. Kill the brewer, the farmer. Kill the brewer, the farmer. Pa, pa, pa. Shoot to kill Yamaza. Kill the brewer.
It was clearly a trap meant to provoke and embarrass Cyril Ramaphosa. Trump weaponized that moment to further his white genocide narrative, but let's be clear. This song has been reviewed by South African courts. The Equality Court ruled it is not hate speech. It's a liberation era chant, offensive to some but protected under freedom of political expression. Still, Trump didn't care about legal nuances. He used the clip to frame South Africa as an anti-white. But here's the irony. Standing next to Ramaphosa were wealthy white South Africans, Afrikaners. That's not genocide, that's co-governance. What do you all think about this Oval Office Showdown? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and comment below to What's Happening podcast for more raw commentary and fact-checked heat.
This was quite a summit. This man flies in from Pretoria because there's a right-wing conspiracy theory bubbling right now. It says they're killing all the white people in South Africa. Trump apparently has seen this online, so he brings the president in, he turns the lights down and makes him sit through a multimedia presentation about his own country titled White Genocide.
Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you.
We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not?
These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. But okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa.
Yeah, that's right. The guy who couldn't find South Africa on a map of Africa is telling the president of South Africa where it is. There's no genocide against white farmers in South Africa. That evidence Trump presented has been widely debunked. Those are not burial sites. It's all about as real as those MS-13 knuckle tattoos he was convinced. Say what you want about Joe Biden being old. He never forced other world leaders to watch deepfake videos posted by Mimo on Facebook. I mean, seriously, does anyone at the White House, does anyone around him ever say, oh, Mr. President, this one is wrong, this is not real, this one makes you look demented and dumb? Nobody does. The Defense Department today formally accepted that $400 million plane from good old terror-friendly Qatar. Peter Alexander of NBC News had the audacity to ask Trump a question about it, and Trump went, well, let's just say it wasn't his most presidential moment.
It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. You ought to go back to your studio at NBC because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. And you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. His name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. If they weren't fake news like this jerk, because they're all guys like that idiot. These are all white farmers that are being buried. And he asks about a jet that was given. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You know, you are so bad. You're such a bad reporter.
That's right. How dare you interrupt my made-up story about white farmers being burned to ask about my new jet plane. He's very sensitive about this plane thing. Not sensitive enough to not take the plane, but sensitive.
So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay. But coming back to this issue.
No, we're not. No. Grandpa's off on another mental adventure, and we are not coming back to that issue. He's now complaining about fake news while spreading fake news.
Let's kick things off with President Trump's meeting with the president of South Africa today. And because it's Donald Trump, things got weird.
Death, horrible death. I don't know.
What a host. Death. Hey, do you want a Diet Coke? Yeah. Death, horrible death. Now, the reason Trump turned this White House event into a murder podcast is that Trump is convinced that there is a white genocide going on in South Africa, which of course means there is no white genocide happening in South Africa. It's not even mathematically possible. I mean, you'll never run out of white South Africans when one of them is making 5,000 kids a week. But still, Trump thinks there is one, and you know he cares about it because he said white genocide. It's like someone told him, hey, it's not just a genocide, it's a white genocide, you know, the bad kind. And Trump's like, oh shit, get him in. But don't worry, South African president, there's a way out of this. Qatar got Trump a plane. What sweet, sweet bribe did you bring him?
I brought you a really fantastic golf book. Weighs 14 kilograms. Oh, and it showcases the golf courses in our country.
Yeah, you that up. You lost Trump that book, and you definitely lost him at kilograms.
Here's our take at Bedworth Times. This wasn't diplomacy. This was disinfo theater. Trump spent that meeting spinning debunked conspiracy theories. Ramaphosa didn't take the bait. He stood with facts, receipts, and real white South Africans by his side. Trump bought vibes, South Africa brought the truth. The Oval Office ambush was just a tactic, an old trick. Corner the opposition, hijack the conversation, control the narrative. But it backfired. No evidence, no land grabs, no genocide, just a Malema chant on a flat screen. Meanwhile, SA came through with Afrikaners, billionaires, and white political leaders. That's not genocide, that's reality. And whether they know it or not, Trump and Musk just gave Malema more publicity than ever. Global headlines, viral clips, they just turned a political firebrand into a global icon. The radicals in every country are bound to follow him like a cult, because not every country agree with the West or the policies of America. As for Cyril, you gotta give him credit for the strategy of bringing in Johan Rupert, even the golfers, knowing how well Donald Trump loves golf. He came prepared to defend his country against propaganda. He said it loud and clear. If white farmers were being killed in a genocide, why are they standing here with me? But let's keep it real. The posture, the silence, it wasn't giving commander-in-chief. That posture, the smacking, the smiling, or the laughing, it wasn't giving the commander-in-chief, as in like someone who's a leader. Mandela would have handled that differently. Calm, unshaken, firm. He stood up for Palestine. He faced the West with dignity and confidence. That's what leadership looks like.
Would you want a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
One of the mistakes which some political analysts make is to think that their enemies should be our enemies.
And let's not forget, South Africa's crime crisis affects all races. Data shows most murder victims are black, not white farmers. Crime is a tragedy, not a racial war. So what's happening? A targeted campaign to undermine South Africa's moral stance at ICJ. The minute South Africa stood up to power, the backlash began. Elon cried racism, Trump cried genocide, Afriforum cried wolf. And this is all the Israeli media machine propaganda. But South Africa stood up with facts, receipts, and truth, and we are here to break it down. That's what's happening. What's the weight? Oval Office sparks fly, but SA stands tall, disinforms a mask, and truth breaks the wall. Global powers play dirty, but SA's light stays steady. We are out, but the convoy is not. Drop a comment. Who's really pulling the strings? Is it America? Is it Israel Benjamin? Or is it Elon Musk himself? Like, subscribe, and keep the fire burning with the curious Jen. And don't forget to comment and let us know what do you think about this showdown. Because when justice speaks, lies speak. Keep it real, stay honest. Catch us next time on Bedworth Times. We are out. Boom.
The dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Up next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started as, to some degree, an ambush.
Well, Katie, I mean, it was an ambush.
Ambush.
Ambush. Ambush.
An ambush.
Ambushing.
Ambushed inside the Oval.
To know what's happening in our world. So, South African President Ramaphosa paid a visit to the White House yesterday, which turned into a surprise presentation on conspiracy theories of a white genocide in his country. Take a look.
You have many people that feel they're being persecuted and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on. We do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
and then
take
when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is quite...
Nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
the farmers are black. The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black.
Oh my God! So between ambushing Zelensky and this, why would world leaders continue to come to the White House?
Okay, well, first of all, this is the problem with getting all your information from Laura Loomer and Elon Musk. Yeah. Because this is what they're going to deal you. And it was false conspiracy theory. One, the fact that the president of South Africa was trying to share was that data collected by white farmers themselves.
Economics is based on facts. It's not based on feelings. Right. The United States is the world's largest economy. It's just that simple. It has the world's largest military industrial complex, the world's largest health industrial complex, the world's largest advertising industrial complex. The United States still is the economic center of gravity around which the world turns. You can feel about that however you feel about that, but facts don't really care about your feelings. And so there isn't a scenario that is tenable where South Africa thrives as a country and the United States is not part of the conversation of trade. It just isn't possible, right? And so I think it's pretty clear that it was necessary for the president to go there. He doesn't need yours or my permission to do it. But I do just want to say, just take a moment to think about how President Ramaphosa has handled the number of months that have led up to this, the number of comments and conversations that have taken place, even some of the diplomatic fallouts that have taken place. The diplomat for South Africa being basically thrown out of the US, and how he's held his sinew. And I think today, whether or not you like President Ramaphosa, and believe me when I tell you that I have various differences, sometimes with his politics, often with his words, and even more often than that with his actions or the lack of thereof, You have to give it to the man who knew how to hold his mouth and hold his tongue until he was in a position where he could speak to President Donald Trump directly. But for me, I think the president did well. I do think, though, that the winner of this conversation, the standout success, without question, was Team South Africa. No doubt about it.
President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, take a bow. You are Black excellence. Have you seen the showdown that happened between President Ramaphosa and President Trump at the White House about this whole white genocide situation happening in South Africa? President Ramaphosa is so strategic and so smart. He knew that as a Black South African, he would not get the ear of the type of president Trump is. So he brought with him in his delegation 3 white South Africans, including his Minister of Agriculture, who were also saying to Trump, this whole story of genocide of white farmers in South Africa is false. Didn't work. Did not work. The Afrikaner white refugees that came to America recently are all famous people. Golfers, there's a billionaire in there. So the theory is that Elon Musk has planted the seed in Trump's ear with his other right-wing allies that there is this genocide of white people going on in South Africa. They also provided him with the absolute proof in this video from this minority political party in South Africa. This political party was spewing a lot of hate rhetoric towards white farmers and were advocating for unaliving them. The gag is, though, that this was a very tiny minority grouping that has absolutely no political power and cannot influence South African policies. So Trump showing that video shows that he really does not understand who is calling the shots in South Africa, because that video totally just discredited his claim of genocide, and he did not even realize that. I give so much credit to President Ramaphosa. He was poised. He was diplomatic. He was articulate. He made sense. Perfect representation of strong African leadership. South Africa, you should feel so proud of your president. He came to America and he shone like a diamond in comparison to his American counterpart. Let me know what you think of President Ramaphosa's visit. Did he do a fantastic job representing not only South Africa, but Africans and African leaders on the world stage?